Yeah, there are many medals mentioned in beds from the 16th century and other sources that are somehow collected to America. But in the course of my work of the Novi Orbi article, which I had just published in the MCA advisory, I thought, yeah, can we find some medals which are more closely related to America or have a direct relationship to America from the 16th century, as many of the medals just contain titles or are assumed to be related to America, but do not show a clear hint to it. I've made some thoughts and read through the literature, but I'm not sure myself if I have the right view on this. So I would like to present this to you, and maybe we can discuss a bit if I took the right ones, if you've got other thoughts. So that would be very nice. What I think is a direct relationship to America or direct relation, that's persons, event, places, animals, or relations in from with America that are mentioned directly on the obverse or the reverse of the medal. So not just some titles, but something which has to do with America. So we've got some groups which appear in beds, which I would think would not fall under this category. For example, the Novi Orbi medals, which were struck between 1560, 1570 by Giampaolo Poggini on Philip II. And some other cast medals, which were subsequently produced by Jongelink in the Netherlands or other artists. Many of them just, mention the word or the title Novi Orbi Rex, King of the New World, but the subject of the medal, mostly the reverse, has nothing or not much to do with America, but with some treaties, which is shown on the first medal, or just with some persons related to Philip II, like his wives Isabella or Anna. Then there is another group of 16th century medals which appear in beds as America related, which bed 17, 18, 20, 22, which are like Dutch medals showing some relation to naval trade or naval activities, but which is assumed to be related to America, but could be related to sea trade in general, trade with Africa, with the East Indies. So there is no real clear relationship with America. Then we have the group, I mentioned this also in another talk some months ago here in this social hours. That is, of course, the medals and jetons which have the motto of Charles V, plus ultra on it, beyond the pillars of Hercules, which are also pictured on many of them. Of course, this refers to America, but is the motto of Charles V and is generally not seen those pieces as directly related to America, as they are also, referring mostly or in many cases to other happenings, other historical events in Europe, actually. Then there is another group where, from the late 16th century, from Philip II, where also jetons, where he is Indorum Rex, King of the Indies, mentioned. This is just another title and has something to do with America, but from what I understand, not a close relationship or direct relation to America. So now that I've excluded many things, I would like to show you the 5 medals which I have found from the 16th century, which I would suppose are in direct relationship to America. And yeah, given that I just showed a big number of possible candidates, it's not a whole lot, I would say, what I found. So the first medal I actually found, and this is also quite well known, is from Christoph Weiditz from 1529. It's a German Renaissance medal by Christoph Weiditz on Hernan Cortes. And of course, this person, Hernan Cortes, as a conqueror of Mexico and the Aztec Empire, is definitely closely related to America. So it's maybe not on America itself, but this medal shows a person which is just famous for activities in America. This is the Berlin example with obverse and reverse. And I always discuss shortly the collecting options of the medals, which I suspect all of the 5 medals are very rare, so it's like not really easy to get some original examples, but there is some limited possibility for collecting with some restrikes, recasts, which I will show. So here from this medal of Christoph Weiditz, there's just one, for me, I have to say, one contemporary cast known in a European private collection. This is there since about 40 years, mentioned by Volz, and I am quite sure Stephen Schur has seen this medal, but that's the only one I could find out in private hands. Of course, there are some aftercasts like the one in my collection shown here, but this is not very nice. So also very rare. So there's very limited collecting options, but there is. Then we've got the second medal I found with direct relation to America. This is a very well-known Drake medal, Betts 9 actually, which shows the famous voyage of Francis Drake in the between 1570 and 1580. So this medal is probably made shortly after 1580 and shows the voyage of Francis Drake. It's a little dotted line here. It's hard to see. But of course also shows America with different places shown. So this is quite nice. The map should be somehow made by Mercator, as I read. So this is a very nice medal and very desirable. From the actual book, Betts Medal Companion by Chris McDowell, it is said that there's one example believed in private hands, but this has never been seen at auction, at least to my knowledge. And yeah, the most common way to collect it is a modern collection. Like from the 1970s, which this is the one which I have in my collection. So it's of course also very nice, but not the original one, of course. Then the third medal with direct relation is very famous, would be Betts 12, which is of course the famous India medal showing the person of India, which yeah, could be, you know, interpreted as America, maybe also with other and then animals also described by Giampaolo Borgini as a llama, so American animals. So this medal directly depicts yeah, a scene from America, so it's very directly related to it. It's struck around 1560, and there are quite some examples, like a handful in museums, and Betts 10, Betts 11 seem later a variation of this medal, whereas they are interpreted a bit differently by McDowell. In terms of collecting of Betts 12, there are 1 to 2 struck originals in the market, appeared in auctions. Ford had one in his collection, but from this medal, there exist a lot of cast copies, like directly from the medal with or without signature, and like variations like this Betts 12B with, you know, the front, the India scene, and reverse, the city of Antwerp. So this is quite well known and quite collectible. The fourth one I had identified would be Betts 13. This subject here, it's not as directly related as Betts 12, but the reverse shows the figure of Spain getting 2 keys presented and says Spain as the ruler of two worlds, which actually means Europe and America. So this is just from the subject of the medal also directly related to America. This is also a very rare medal. I have just figured out 2 original silver versions in museums in Bargello and the Museo Arqueologico in Madrid. And in terms of collecting, it's also very rare. I just found one struck bronze original, which is also in my collection, and one aftercast, which was the Lichti example. I have actually not found more examples of those medals, and it was not featured in any of the major collections like Ford or the Adams collection. The fifth and the last example is more of a plaquette, which is very big. It's like 17 centimeters in diameter. It's the figure of America surrounded by animals that are or are not related to America, but the artist obviously thought they are. And it is made around 1600. No one knows really well, either in Germany or the Netherlands, and is part of a series of medals or plaquettes on 4 continents: Europe, America, Africa, and Asia. There are quite a few examples, also a handful in different museums like Berlin, Munich, or New York. In terms of collecting, no auction appearances of those medals have been recorded, but there are 20th century electrotype copies, reproductions of this series, most likely made by Hans-Peter Brosatus from Germany. And I have one example of the Africa plaquette, which obviously is an electrotype, so there is some collectability, even maybe not for the originals. That was the main part of my talk. So pulling together, there are quite some 16th century medals, features in Betz or other publications with some relationship to America, but many of them just have titles of the rulers or just sea trade in general as a subject. And I could just find 5 medals which I would directly relate to America from the 16th century. Of course, this is just my interpretation. That would be the end of my talk, and I would be very happy about some discussion about it. Thank you very much.